November 16, 2020. At this very moment, something happened in Brazil that made executives at the country's biggest banks lose sleep. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't a crisis. For them, it was much worse. Brazil's central bank launched PIX, an instant free payment system. In just 3 years, PIX processed over 42 billion transactions. It moved more than 28 trillion reais. And in the process, it destroyed one of the most profitable businesses in Brazilian banking history. Before you understand the bank's fear, you need to understand the empire they built. For decades, Brazilian banks profited from something you never saw: your financial transactions. Every time you made a TED or DOC transfer, banks charged between 8 and 15 reais. Every time you issued a boleto, another 3 to 5 reais. Every time you used a debit card, the merchant paid fees of 1% to 3%. Seems small? Let's do the math. In 2019, the last full year before PIX, Brazilian banks earned 15 billion reais just from TED and DOC fees, 8 billion reais from boleto fees, 45 billion reais from debit and credit card fees. Add it up, more than 68 billion reais per year. That's right, 68 billion reais that left your pocket and went straight to bank profits. And the best part, for them of course, was that it was invisible. You barely noticed how much you were paying. Fees hidden in fine print, administrative charges, operational costs, a perfect system, a lucrative monopoly, an invisible empire. Until the central bank said, enough. November 16, 2020. PIX goes live. The banks of course did the bare minimum. Confusing interfaces, low limits, mysterious bugs. But something unexpected happened. Brazilians fell in love with PIX. In 1 week, 1.6 million users signed up. In 1 month, 67 million PIX keys registered. In 6 months, 270 million transactions per month. Why? Because for the first time in history, ordinary Brazilians had access to something once reserved for the privileged, transferring money instantly for free and simply. No fees, no bureaucracy, no fine print.
Antes eu pagava R$ 10 para fazer TED. Agora é grátis. Eu vendia na feira e tinha que pagar taxa do cartão. Agora recebo tudo por PIX.
Minha mãe, que mal sabe usar celular, aprendeu a fazer PIX.
And the banks? The banks watched in horror. 2021, a 45% drop in revenue from TEDs and DOCs. 2022, a 67% drop in boleto issuances. 2023, PIX transactions surpassed debit cards. The empire was crumbling, and the worst was still to come. Because the banks didn't accept defeat with folded arms, they struck back. Suddenly, problems began to appear. Artificially low PIX limits, 1,000 reais per transaction. High limits for TEDs, 50,000 to 100,000 reais. Apps that errored out on PIX but worked perfectly with TED. Coincidence? When they couldn't charge for PIX directly, banks got creative. Fees to increase your PIX limit. Priority PIX fees, which don't technically exist. Fees to receive PIX in a business account. Service bundles that include PIX but cost 30 reais per month. Between 2021 and 2023, banking federations spent over 150 million reais lobbying Congress. The goal? Create regulations that could limit PIX or allow fees. Bills appeared out of nowhere. A security fee for PIX transactions. A financial system contribution on transfers. Mandatory limits, for security reasons. None passed. But the attempt was there. Suddenly, every week there was news about scams via PIX, express kidnappings using PIX, frauds made easier by PIX. All true? Yes, scams exist. But the question is, who is amplifying these stories? According to central bank data, fraud in PIX, 0.02% of transactions. Credit card fraud, 0.15%. Boleto fraud, 0.35%. PIX is 7 times safer than credit cards. But you won't see that in bank-sponsored news. PIX isn't just a payment system. It's a redistribution of economic power. Before PIX, 5 big banks controlled 80% of financial transactions. Small merchants paid 3% to 5% in fees on every sale. Digital banks had to pay the big banks to process transactions. After PIX, any fintech can compete on equal footing. Merchants save billions in fees. Consumers have real choice. That's financial democratization. And traditional banks know it. Look at the numbers. Itaú Unibanco. Fee revenue in 2019, 23.4 billion reais. Fee revenue in 2023, 18.1 billion reais, a drop of 5.3 billion reais. Bradesco. Fee revenue in 2019, 19.8 billion reais. Fee revenue in 2023, 15.2 billion reais, a drop of 4.6 billion reais. Banco do Brasil. Fee revenue in 2019, 16.2 billion reais. Fee revenue in 2023, 12.7 billion reais, a drop of 3.5 billion reais. Adding the 5 largest banks, the drop was over 20 billion reais per year. 20 billion that stayed in the pockets of the Brazilian people. Now do you understand why they're afraid? But there's something even more frightening for the banks. The PIX you know today is just the beginning. The central bank is already developing international PIX, instant transfers to other countries, without SWIFT, without absurd exchange fees. Imagine sending money to Portugal, Angola, or Japan, the same way you send it to your neighbor. International remittances generate 8 billion reais in profits for Brazilian banks each year. Automatic PIX, recurring debits without credit cards, without fees, without revolving interest. The credit card market in Brazil moves 2.5 trillion reais per year, with average interest of 300% annually. Guaranteed PIX, instant credit linked to PIX, competing directly with bank loans. The personal credit market generates 95 billion reais in annual interest for banks. Are you starting to grasp the scale of what's at stake? We're not talking about billions. We're talking about trillions of reais that could leave the bank's hands and go to the real market, to people, to the productive economy. And that's why the war is only beginning. So what's going to happen? 3 possible scenarios. Scenario 1, the people's victory. PIX keeps evolving, breaking monopolies, democratizing finance. Banks adapt or die. Scenario 2, the banking counterattack. Lobbyists manage to create security regulations that in practice limit PIX. Fees return in disguise. The empire rebuilds. Scenario 3, half a revolution. PIX remains free for individuals, but banks manage to charge businesses. A partial victory for both sides. Which one will happen? That depends on you. Because this isn't a war between banks and the central bank. It's a war between an old model of making money through privilege and a new model of serving the public. And every time you use PIX instead of TED Pay by PIX instead of card share information about PIX's advantages, pressure politicians not to destroy PIX, you're defending the Brazil you want to live in. Banks don't fear PIX because it's insecure. They fear PIX because it works, and because it proves it's possible to have a financial system that serves the people, not feeds on them. Now tell me, do you think the banks will give up easily? Leave your opinion in the comments. Do you trust PIX's future? Or do you think the banks will find a way to destroy it? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more content about the Portuguese-speaking world's language, culture, and society.